and welcome everyone to another episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital, a podcast about video games and the stories they tell. I'm one of your hosts, Caitlin Bailey, and I have with me my co-host, Mark Bigney. Mark, what's up?
I am full of Indian food and enthusiasm for video games. Caitlin, how are you?
I am not full of Indian food, but I am full of enthusiasm for video games.
I'll meet you halfway.
So today, as always, we're going to talk about what we've been playing lately. Then we will talk about Azure Striker Gunvolt in our gaming opinions on old school funware segment, aka GOOF. Then we will jump into our feature title, which is somewhat of a retro title, where we're going to be talking about the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, the remaster that just came out. And then finally, we will shamelessly hype some upcoming titles in our Shout segment. Mark, why don't you start us off by telling us what you've been playing lately?
First off, a little bit of a lifestyle confession. I have been very fulsome in my praise of the money-saving lifestyle that is the Game Pass lifestyle.
Yes.
There's a bit of a problem, though, and that is that sort of default status and the fact that there's so many quality titles, even independently of the ones that I'm actively looking forward to on Game Pass, that this sometimes enables my default cheapskate nature, and something can sit on my Steam wishlist for a long time, and I can be 100% confident that I'm going to enjoy it. And I keep looking at it, it says $6 Canadian. I'm like, nah, that's too much. Which is objectively an absurd position to have, right?
Sure.
Now, it is not quite as absurd as the position that I've heard from my friend who, for a while, subscribed to Game Pass on the basis that it was too good of a deal to pass up, but didn't play anything on Game Pass and instead bought everything on Steam because he was nervous that it was going to get pulled from Game Pass. To which I said, why don't you just cancel your Game Pass subscription? And he would reply, but it's such a good deal. To which my response was, it is clearly not a good deal for you because you are wasting money. Anyway, setting all that aside, why do I tell this story? Because this is the story of Bleed 2. I have talked before about Bleed. It is a platformer dual stick action where you are firing with guns akimbo like mad, and you have it being very de rigueur in games of this ilk, a bullet time element. And this is an indie game done by Ian Campbell, and I was initially directed to Bleed by virtue of the fact that it works with Portmaster, which is a program that allows you to install ports of PC titles on a variety of retro handhelds. Among them, the 35XS Plus, which is the Ambernic device that you occasionally use, Caitlin, and also on the Miu Flip, which I've been using extensively, at least the various custom firmwares that allow for Portmaster. And Bleed 2 is no exception. I played Bleed 1, had a great time with it, very, very small title, and everyone on the internet spoke with one voice to tell me that if as good as Bleed is, Bleed 2 is so much better. And I say, yeah, but $6 whole?
Yeah.
Anyway, I finally got over myself recently after yet another bout of tinkering around with Portmaster on variety of retro devices. And my first reaction was a little bit of surprise because this is one of those sequels that strips away some of the features of the original. But upon reflection, this was a foolish concern because Bleed 2 is very much a refinement of the formula. It is indeed better in every way compared to Bleed, and Bleed was great. A great sense of humor, wonderful sense of action, lovely control scheme, very responsive, great sense of momentum and of kinetic action. And Bleed 2 gets rid of the weapon variety, which, again, it was foolish of me to react negatively to it because I never used any of the other weapons in the first Bleed anyway. You'd go to the shop, you'd purchase it with the in-game currency. I tried a little while and said, I think the default weapon is better than this. And so, naturally, it is the most churlish of reactions to regret the fact. And besides, after you beat the game, they give you a whole bunch of alternate weapons to play around with anyway, and a whole bunch of weird asymmetric characters. So it's not even that the variety is gone. They've just decided to focus it a little bit. In addition, there's now an element of parrying projectiles. We very recently were talking about Doom the Dark Ages, and how the parry element there was so bizarre in that it was permissive to the point of straining credibility and not even making it a particularly fun thing. I have also been complaining about parrying mechanisms in the context of Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, and indeed almost every other marquee action game of the past few years. Everything's all about parrying. So, naturally, I had a certain degree of trepidation having seen both ends of the parrying spectrum recently. But Bleed 2 does an extraordinarily good job. It is very well calibrated. It is very good at giving you just the right level of telegraphing, such that if you're paying attention and if your reflexes are on point, you can parry what the game is going to be sending at you, but indeed it is not a cast iron requirement. Indeed, the comparison to Doom the Dark Ages are very pointed because the parryable bullets are also of a different color and can be sent back to the various bosses and enemies. I mentioned bosses in particular because the boss design is a standout of Bleed 2. They typically have several different forms, several different stages, and frankly, any single boss encounter shows more clever boss design than I saw in the entirety of Doom the Dark Ages, frankly. And so they're just a joy, and the levels are short and punchy, constantly moving forward. The actual story itself is very short, but Bleed 2 has procedurally generated levels. There's an endless mode where you can go through on a single life, and it will procedurally generate levels. It's not a roguelike in that there's no notion of upgrades or no unlocks or anything like that. It's just, hey, you like the fundamental action system? You want to play around maybe with some of the alternate weapons, maybe, or some of the alternate characters, or just play more with the beginning character? Go for it. We'll just slather some enemies and some platforms to jump around with, exploiting some of the quality mechanisms we had in the story mode. And that makes me extraordinarily happy. I've been playing through a lot of procedurally generated levels. I'm playing through the campaign again on a higher difficulty level. It's marvelous. Bleed 2 is a tremendous indie action platformer. Exactly what I was in the mood for, and it is indeed as advertised, like Bleed, but better in every way, and Bleed was already great. And I can run it on almost anything, which is anything with 2 sticks. There's a fair number of devices that only have 1 stick or 0 sticks. That's not something you can do. Pro tip, by the way, anybody here that dabbles with Portmaster, the way to get Bleed and Bleed 2 to run on Portmaster is to download the Linux versions. That is not included in the instructions in Portmaster, but you need the Linux versions of Bleed, which you can download through Steam, through the Steam console, and if you don't know how that works, send me a message, I can give you a tutorial. And that is how you can run it on Portmaster. So this is one of the cases where, on the strength of Bleed and Bleed 2, I decided to look at who the developer was. And this is developed by a guy by the name of Ian Campbell from Toronto, respect. And I couldn't help but notice that he hadn't released anything on the Steam page since 2017. I was very disappointed because immediately after finishing Bleed 2, I'm like, whatever his next title was, I'm going to buy that. And he's definitely earned a certain degree of credibility. And that is because he has become a lead developer of DrinkBox Studios. Does that name ring a bell to you, Caitlin?
It does not.
They're the people who put out Guacamelee and Nobody Saves the World. Oh. I don't know if you're familiar with either of those titles.
Yes. Yeah, I played Nobody Saves the World a couple years ago with one of my friends. It was really fun.
Nobody Saves the World is aggressively delightful and quite novel in terms of its overall vaguely action RPG-ish, kind of Zelda-y kind of thing. But anyway, lovely sense of humor, very, very cool mechanisms. I was a big fan of Nobody Saves the World. And Guacamelee is a widely acknowledged classic of indie design for a good reason. Yeah. It's a very, very well done Metroidvania-style thing. And I was very pleased to see that Ian Campbell continues to exercise his wacky talents in the games industry and did not mysteriously go silent in 2017. So that is some Canadian representation for you. I think this officially means that the podcast constitutes Canadian content. I am ready to receive funding from the Canadian cultural boards as appropriate. And so that's Bleed 2. Highly recommended. I'd say jump in with Bleed 2. You can skip Bleed. You can go back to Bleed if you want to. It is absolute delight, well worth the price of admission if you're at all inclined towards action platformers. It's extremely well done, and indeed all the output of DrinkBox that I've done any work with, not to imply that Ian Campbell constitutes the entirety of DrinkBox, but yeah, quality work all around, big recommendation.
Okay, so you would recommend starting with Bleed 2 just because it's so good, right? Would you be able to go back to Bleed after Bleed 2?
100%, and I have.
Okay.
Just trying it out on different devices and fiddling around with other things. The core control scheme, which is extremely well executed, the movement traversal mechanisms, the way firearms feel, the way enemies present themselves, it's just a very satisfying system. It's just that Bleed 2 adds this very satisfying parry element and doubles down on the original strengths, particularly in terms of the endless mode, which is great. And the boss encounters in Bleed 1 were extremely good, but Bleed 2 really amps it up considerably by having multiple stages, each boss tending to exploit different kinds of gimmicks.
Nice. I mean, it looks awesome. I feel very tempted. And it's not even on sale, but it's $10 US, so it's hard to complain about that.
I think it is definitely worth $10 American. If I had $10 American to give Ian Campbell again, I would gladly do so. It's a quality title, very much worth your time.
Nice.
What have you been up to, Caitlin?
So, a couple good friends of mine each got a Switch 2, and one of them decided she didn't really need it yet, and she knew that I was interested in one. So, she let me have hers. So, I was able to play some Mario Kart World, which I was really excited about. Mario Kart has, quite a bit of history with me. I remember, when I think Mario Kart, I still think of Super Mario Kart back in the day on the Super Nintendo.
Same here.
Mario Kart 8 is the thing that sold me the Wii U, just because I kept seeing all those clips of, Luigi looking kind of perturbed as he's, driving past people, and I kind of miss the days before blue shells were a thing, but I love Mario Kart. I just think Mario Kart is wonderful. Double Dash was super fun. Anyway.
Can we spend a minute on the blue shell? Because I think the blue shell epitomizes to me why I am not on the same page as many Nintendo games.
Yeah.
So for those unfamiliar, those blessedly unfamiliar with the blue shell, why don't you give a quick rundown about what the blue shell is?
Okay, yeah. So the blue shell is something that you get if you are... Okay. The way that the items now work in modern Mario Karts is there's certain items that you are much more likely to get when you are further back versus when you're in the front. If you're in the front, you're probably going to get bananas, maybe a mushroom if you're lucky.
Garbage. You're going to get garbage.
You get garbage. If you're in the back, you get the awesome star, you get the thing that turns you into a bullet and you go forward, and you also get the blue shell. The blue shell is the giant FU shell. So you use it, you activate it, and it automatically flies to whoever is in first place and does a huge explosion around them and takes them out.
You need line of sight to the leader in order to deploy it, right?
You might think so, but no, it'll fly wherever first place is.
Oh.
There's zero skill involved in using a blue shell.
You can defend yourself against the blue shell, can't you, right?
You can if you have one particular item, this horn loudspeaker thing. If you use it at the right time, it will knock the blue shell away. But that would involve getting a good item when you're in first place, which doesn't happen very often.
Right. And if your timing is exquisite. I remember even as a child watching game shows where contestants would do a thing, doesn't matter what it was, doesn't matter if it was trivia or absurd feats of dexterity or endurance or whatever. And then at the end, there might be something where it was very clear that the system would just randomly spew out points. Just so that there was some possibility that anyone could win, even up to the last minute. And even as a child watching game shows sick from school, I'd be like, this is nonsense. What are you doing? Yeah. And so much of Nintendo design seems to be premised on that principle. Rubber banding AI is bad enough, but this is rubber banding PvP to the point that is just redonkulous. You can balance things so that you can minimize absolutely crushing losses. I can respect that even. I even wish that some games that I enjoy had a little bit more of that philosophy. And then there's the blue shell, which is quite frankly redonkulous, especially since, let us not forget, that on top of the fact that this is just an I nuke whoever's in first place, if you're in last place, that doesn't redound to your benefit. It redounds to the benefit of whoever's in second, unless, of course, they're within the blast radius of the blue shell.
Yeah.
So you're not even advancing your own position because the first place player is probably not going to end up last. You're not going to advance up to 7th. This is just a way to give the middle finger to whoever's currently winning. And then whoever was in second hopes that another blue shell is in the offing.
Yeah, that's how the blue shell works.
Okay, rant over. So tell us about Mario Kart World.
Okay, so Mario Kart World, I guess Nintendo decided to get in, or Nintendo/Mario Kart decided to get in on the open world thing. Ultimately, when you're just playing the Grand Prix, it's not really any different. Okay, it's a little different. The main thing is that you'll go through the first level, you win, and then the second level, let's say you go from Peach's Castle to Bowser's Castle or something. When you start the second race, you will start at the end of Peach's castle, and you will drive into Bowserland. And it's kind of cool. It doesn't really change a whole lot. But they also have some free play modes where you can just drive around the entire map, all the different racetracks and stuff. Obviously, it would take you quite a bit of time to get from, one end to the other. But you can do that, and it's kind of cool. The Grand Prix, very similar to previous Mario Karts. You have 4 races, you do the 4, you hopefully win, you'll unlock a character, you get coins, you unlock vehicles, stuff like that. When you play online, there's no Grand Prix, you just jump into a race, and the races keep going until you leave. So it's very, you can jump in, jump out at any time. Playing online, however, is a lot. It's like the most chaotic 5 seconds of your race against computers, except it's the entire race. So you might be first, and then all of a sudden you're 22nd, and then you can make yourself up to 7th, and there's just a huge clump of nonsense, and there's coins everywhere, because everyone is constantly throwing their green shells, and their red shells, and their stars. There's bullet bills. It's insane.
It sounds a bit like Fall Guys.
Actually, yeah. Yeah, it definitely has some of that chaos involved. It's fun. It's probably not the main way that I will be playing Mario Kart World. I much prefer, playing against a handful of computers and maybe playing with a friend or two. But yeah, it's pretty fun. And then for those of you who are watching this episode on YouTube, and friendly reminder, if you didn't know, you can listen to our episodes on YouTube, and they'll have some gameplay footage. You may notice that I drive, or I'm attempting to drive, not on purpose, but, it's a whole thing. I drive straight into a wall, except if I don't drive straight into a wall, I kind of turn at the last second, and I just slightly bump against the wall, and it's weird. Why is that happening? That's because I didn't realize that Nintendo has smart steering on by default. I learned that later. I didn't feel like redoing the footage, so it is what it is. But it's wild to me that that's on by default. I guess it's so kids have more fun and don't just drive into walls. I don't know.
I do not understand Nintendo's thinking. For both good and bad, right?
Yeah,
I look at some Nintendo designs, and the ones that I like, I'm I could never imagine the kind of creativity that would come up with such instantly iconic characters. But by the same token, so much of their gameplay design, why? Why are you doing this thing? This is absurd. But they sold 20 trillion, I think that's the actual number, Switch 2 consoles. So They must be doing something right.
Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, Mario Kart World, it's very fun. There's other game modes that I haven't tried yet. One where I think, the last 4 people, it's like some kind of elimination race, but I never tried that one. So I only ever played the Grand Prix, both solo and with another person. And I played online with one friend and a whole bunch of randos, and it was very intense. But it's been quite fun so far.
So all the coverage that I've seen of Mario Kart World, and I haven't seen a whole lot, but I've seen some, has struggled to convey the value added by the open world segments and elements.
Yeah.
And hearing you talk about it, I'm getting the same vibe. Everyone who talks about it is there's this thing, and I guess it's different, and it's there.
Yeah.
And anyway, you all know how Mario Kart works. Moving on.
That's pretty much it. I mean, I guess you could explore some of the maps a little bit more at your leisure, which is nice if you just want to check out, is there a shortcut here? Or this looks cool, but it doesn't ultimately, do anything.
Okay.
I don't remember when this changed, but I was playing Mario Kart World with my husband earlier today, and as soon as he crossed the finish line, it was okay, Caitlin, you got 6th place. It's whoa. I don't get to try to finish the race.
That's weird.
It was weird. I thought that I would at least have a chance to wrap it up, but I guess not. So, okay.
I have to imagine that, again, this is a Nintendo brainwave where it's nobody wants to be out of the action for too long. So we need to worry about Chris getting bored and moving on to something else like Skibbity Toilet. So let's move on to the next race already.
Yeah, I think part of it also could be, I remember playing Super Mario Kart with friends back in the day on like Rainbow Road, and they just kept driving off the level, and they're like not having fun anymore, but they still have to finish the race before we can move on to like the next thing. So
Sure.
maybe, but still, like if you're still driving, like I don't know, allow people to give up by themselves, perhaps, rather than just ending the race. I wasn't playing with our daughter. It was just, my husband and I and a whole bunch of computers. But I still maybe I could have gotten to 5th place. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I believe in you, Caitlin. I think you could have gotten to 5th place.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Hashtag justice for Caitlin.
That's Mario Kart World.
Let us be honest and be thankful at least that Nintendo did not take this as an opportunity to release Mario Kart 8 for the 3rd time, because they've done stuff like that before. But what is your early impression of the Switch hardware?
I mean, it's cool. So, okay, I'm not that much of a hardware person, so I'm sure that there's people that will have loads of complaints about it. But the screen looks nice. I was a little worried because I was coming from my OLED Switch to the Switch 2, and I was like, I don't know, what if the screen is like itty bitty? I mean, not itty bitty, but what if it's smaller like the Switch, the original Switch was? I don't really,
Right.
That wouldn't make me happy. But it looks really nice. The Joy-Cons are fine. They're mostly magnetic now, it seems like. There's just, they don't snap in quite like the Switch 1 Joy-Cons did. I was very happy to learn that I can continue to use my Pro controllers that I got for the original Switch. Apparently, they can't wake the system up for whatever reason. But once the system is on, you can use them just fine. So we played Mario Kart with the Switch Pro controllers, which was cool.
Because apparently the Switch 2 Pro controllers cost $85 American dollars. That's wild.
I guess. Yeah, I never saw a Switch 2 Pro controller. In fact, I even tried to go look at Target to see if they had any, and they did not. So the $85, though, is a lot. And for that price, I will very happily continue to use my original. Honestly, I think they're all off-brand at this point, but I will continue to use my off-brand Switch Pro controllers.
It's really remarkable how far we've come. I remember when I was burning through PS4 controllers at a rapid rate because I kept wearing out the springs while playing Destiny. And even as recently as the PS4 generation, third-party controllers were garbage, and first-party controllers were super expensive. Yeah. And now we're in a glorious land where there are so many really good, really inexpensive third-party controllers for any system you could possibly want. It's great.
Yeah, it's taken me quite a while until sometime in the last few years to finally realize, you don't have to buy the first-party controllers anymore. Because the third-party ones are actually decent. Because I just remember them being garbage, and that is no longer always the case.
GameSir and 8BitDo and a lot of those other companies are light years away from Mad Cats and that garbage we put up with. All right, on the topic of Blast from the Past, let us move on to our gaming opinions on old school funware, aka GOOF. We're going to be talking about Azure Striker Gunvolt. This is by Inti Creates, originally published in 2014 for the Nintendo 3DS, but then there were ports aplenty up to and including current versions available for Steam. And like many a 3DS title at the time, we've talked about this before, they recognized that the lower screen was mostly an inconvenience. It's relevant, and between missions in particular, there's a little bit of an emphasis on swapping back and forth. But when you're actually playing the game, not so much. Azure Striker Gunvolt is a run and gun, a genre of game that I mostly quite enjoy. Mostly. And if that sounds ominous, that is probably intentional. Caitlin, why don't you give us a rundown of what happens in Azure Striker Gunvolt?
Okay, so Azure Striker Gunvolt is the story of Gunvolt, aka GV. He is an adept, which is basically a person who has magic powers, and he was held by this corporation, I guess, called the Sumeragi Group, for some time before he was freed by the resistance group Quill. That is, I don't remember. Quantum something.
It really doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter. He worked with Quill for some time before he runs into this girl named Jewel, and that is Joule. who is being held by the Sumeragi group against her will.
Do you get it? Do you get it? He manipulates electricity, and the girl's name is Jewel. Do you get it, Caitlin? It's important that you get it.
Wink, wink. Yes, yes, yes. Quill orders GV to kill her, I guess, to prevent the enemy from using her, which seems like kind of crappy for Jewel. But lucky for Jewel, GV decides that he's going to quit Quill instead and rescue her. Quill is strangely okay with this.
It's such a bizarre conversation. They're like, you need to murder her. She's dangerous. And he's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I quit. And they're like, ooh, I respect your independence. Oh, but by the way, I'm going to keep doing jobs for you for lots of money as a freelancer. It's like, oh, okay, great. You're hired. It's so strange.
So weird. I don't understand it all. Apparently, there aren't a lot of jobs for people like him. So he just continues to take jobs with Quill, but as a freelancer. Very important distinction.
It's worth emphasizing that the entire story is anime AF, because I was already fully convinced of how painfully shonen all of this was. And it was really emphasized when I discovered how old Gunvolt is. Did you experience that little tidbit of plot development?
No. How old is he?
Dude's 14.
Oh. Okay.
He's just some random, mercenary badass with electrical powers and a gun. And he's just running around, he's doing his thing. It just mentioned that he's 14 and all these Quill operatives that he's dealing with, one of them is 16.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, this belief on the part of these storytellers in a particular genre that all the protagonists have to be usually between the ages of 13 and 15. Older than that is just over the hill and done in. Like, the moment you're studying for university entrance exams, you're no longer interesting. Bye. It's so strange. I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how willing I would be to put the fate of the world in the hands of a 14-year-old boy or girl, honestly. Okay, 14. That's unexpected. I don't know. They all looked young, but I was just like, it's anime? Like, I don't know.
Well, just thinking back to any ridiculously plotted or even not ridiculously plotted story, this is one of the great things about Clair Obscur, actually. Because even though it's a story where it's a world where nobody is old, the protagonists are in their 30s. They are competent adults for the most part, right?
Yeah.
So many games from Japan, if I looked up how old the protagonists were in Sin and Punishment, I guarantee you they have not seen their 20th birthday. I would lay solid money.
Yeah.
And I don't, it is relentless and it is strange.
So I don't watch anime as much as I used to, but when I was in high school, I watched a lot of it. And I mean, Evangelion, they were, I believe, 14.
But that's so they could really perv on them properly.
Oh, yes. And then Fushigi Yugi, I believe she was 15. Definitely a thing with the whole teenage magic protagonists. Or sometimes not magic, sometimes robot piloting.
Anyway, so we have this GV guy. And he is running around doing his run and gun thing. And it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit of a gimmick. Sometimes it's a successful gimmick, and sometimes it's not. I'd be curious to hear your opinion. You don't really shoot things as a rule. What you do is shooting them tags them, and then you deploy your electrical field, and that's what does most of the damage to them.
Yeah.
As a variant, it's kind of novel. How do you think it shakes out in terms of gameplay to your tastes?
Apparently, there's Azure Striker Gunvolt Striker Pack, and it has both the games. So, anyway, okay. So, I got to play that first, and in Azure Striker Gunvolt 2, you have this big special ability that does this big explosion thing. You also have this other character that has different mechanics, and I thought that was really cool. So anyway, coming back to Azure Striker Gunvolt 1, it felt a little, I don't know, it didn't feel as nice, which was a little bit of a, which was a little bit of a bummer. But anyway, so tagging stuff, I liked shooting stuff to tag it and using the ability. I thought it was pretty fun. They make it very flashy. Stuff takes more damage the more tags it has. But there was one level in particular which I grew extremely frustrated with because I could not figure out how I was supposed to make this jump. Anyway, one of the levels has water, and the water level is slowly raising the entire time you're there. And you have to very quickly basically scale upward. There's a few horizontal areas, which, by the way, when you're going through it, the water's still raising, so you have to get out of there fast. I got to this one area where there was this little floating robot guy, and I had to make a pretty big jump over him and get onto a platform in order to continue going up. I died there probably 6 times before my reincarnation thing came up. And reincarnation is something that can randomly happen when you die.
Yep.
And it basically makes you overpowered. Because you die, it reses you to full health, it gives you unlimited EP, which, is that electrical power? Oh my god, it's electrical
Charge,
power,
basically.
Yeah. Anyway, it gives you EP unlimited, so you can just hold in your right button as much as you want to just have your lightning going crazy. You can also jump in midair, and like, normally when you do multiple jumps, you can only do it against a wall. But here, you could just jump over and over, and you'll just jump up into the air, and it's great. And I mean, it made it trivial to get through that level, but
sure.
It's so weird that it just randomly is like, hi, every now and then you die, and we're just going to make you overpowered, and you don't have to play the game in the normal way anymore.
Yeah, it is strange that it's random, and again, as a bizarre catch-up mechanism, the fact that it triggers in an arbitrary way made no sense to me.
Yeah.
I just really didn't like the pacing of individual levels. Like, mostly with run-and-gun games, you're running and you're gunning, right?
Yes.
In Azure Striker Gunvolt, you run, you gun, then you stop, and you just chuck the thing to death. Because,
yeah,
you can be in motion while that's happening, but, they're in the way. And so when playing Iron Meat, when playing Bleed, when playing Contra, when playing games of this ilk, there's a fluidity. You're expected to maintain forward momentum, and there's often a pressure to stay in motion. But Azure Striker Gunvolt, in terms of its basic combat elements, encourages you to engage in stop-start kind of movement.
Yeah.
And this reminded me of a series. It's weird. I really like run-and-gun games. I like the Metal Slug games especially, a lot of the Contra ones, a lot of other games of that ilk. But I don't really like Mega Man games. I haven't really been a big fan of the Mega Man games that I've tried. And Azure Striker Gunvolt was giving me solid Mega Man vibes, not just because the protagonist is blue and can't duck, which, are two cosmetic. Maybe the second one's a little more than cosmetic, but it struck me as a little bit weird. But the overall pacing, the sort of sometimes frustrating platforming elements.
Yes, oh my God.
Sometimes the attack patterns of the enemies, the boss encounters in particular, were giving me very strong Mega Man vibes. And for a lot of people, that is a huge plus. A lot of gamers absolutely adore Mega Man games. I'm not one of them. I've never really jived with the series. And when I looked to see more information about Azure Striker Gunvolt, the developers were very explicitly trying to evoke Mega Man-ness.
Okay.
And so that didn't surprise me very much.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess I've never been too much of a running gun person, not because I don't like them, but just because I haven't played too many. And that includes Mega Man. I own a variety of the Mega Mans, but almost all of the ones, actually not even almost, every single one I've gotten has been because my spouse very much loves Mega Man. And so we have collected them over time. But I still haven't really played them. That's really interesting to me that was like their inspiration, I guess, for Azure Striker Gunvolt. It does kind of make sense also. I don't know if this is common in other running guns, but having that kind of between levels thing where you get a grid of what level you want to go to next, like, isn't that a Mega Man thing?
It is very much a Mega Man thing, although in this case, it doesn't even have the gimmick of getting a new power from the boss you just killed. So, notionally having an ideal order in which to go through them. It's just an ability to choose different levels.
Yeah.
And then there's the level you can't skip, because midway through the first Azure Striker Gunvolt, we are introduced to the character, the element, the atrocity that made me put aside the game and abandon the series in its entirety.
Okay.
We are informed that the antagonist... No, you've met this person. I know you have.
Uh-huh.
We are informed that there is someone menacing the city who is bisexual and has alternate pronouns Zem, XE/XEM. And when this was first identified, I'm like, oh, okay. This is 2014, acknowledging that somebody has alternate pronouns. This is downright progressive. All right, and then we actually meet the character, who is presented as the worst kind of bisexual equals ravenously predatory that I've ever seen. And this person, how would you describe their costuming, Caitlin?
So
remember, this is a family show.
Okay. So a quick...
This is an unfair ask. I'm asking you to do this because I don't know how to do it.
No, I know. A quick aside, I met this character in Azure Striker Gunvolt 2. I did not get to the point where I met them in the first one. But
oh, great. They brought them back. They were so popular. Z was so popular, they decided to bring them back for more. Oh, wow. Wonderful.
So they're wearing this, like, I don't know, this, like, kind of, like, it's very phallic. There is a giant pink, pointy, phallic thing in that area, just sticking out. And their idle animation, they do little hip thrusts. So it's a lot.
It's a lot. And so when Z shows up, Z just starts making, remember, Gunvolt's 14, aggressive comments about how Z is going to make Gunvolt from a boy into a man, how Z smells boy meat. It's super gross. And I was like, all right, I've had enough.
Okay.
That was the end of that.
Yeah, that's understandable. I love that it's like, oh, wow. This is kind of oh, no.
Hard turn. And just to be entirely clear, I think that anyone listening to this understands it is fine. In fact, I encourage creators to consider using villains of alternative sexualities. And there's a lot of bi erasure that goes on. And so I was initially like, oh, yeah, bisexual representation, that's great. Not this way. They don't have to be horn dog predatory freaks with really strange designs that would be considered outre even on an episode of Drag Race.
I was shocked that this was allowed in a Nintendo 3DS game.
To its credit, though, there are a couple moments where I think the sort of electricity gimmick is well done in Azure Striker Gunvolt. There are some platforming elements where you have to use your electricity field to move platforms to where you need them to go, either to jump on them or in one particular segment that I quite enjoyed, moving platforms around to block sustained laser fire, and so you use them as cover to move from place to place. All that stuff is great, but overall, I felt the overall tempo and pacing of the combat was just not to my taste at all. I think that the overall gimmick was to the detriment of the overall experience. And I was bored to tears with the aggressive dialogue as it was, just constant talking. Like, there are these boss fights where they will not shut up, and the subtitles occupy, like, the bottom quarter of the screen. There were times where I couldn't see what was going on because somebody was yammering on in my earpiece. It was obnoxious. And that was even before I started to become deeply troubled with their representation.
Well, did Jewel tell you about how you could hit X in order to hide stuff if it's covering up the screen and you don't want to deal with it?
Oh, I missed that part.
Yeah.
Maybe because I tuned all the yammering out.
Yeah, that's one of the talk to Jewel tips that comes up between levels.
Oh, before her perfect One-chan moments of clumsily brewing coffee and it was
Yes. In between there somewhere.
Yeah, okay. So that was Azure Striker Gunvolt.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, I'm glad.
But that character, man, I don't know.
I confess, I was super disappointed because it showed up on a couple of best of 3DS lists.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a big fan of run and guns. It's just not, it's not a style I like, and I don't think it did it very well.
Okay, we can take a quick break for some ads, and we'll be right back. And we're back. It's time for us to talk about our feature game, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered.
What's your experience with the Elder Scrolls series, Caitlin?
Okay, I'll give a quick one and then I'll talk a little bit about each. I've played Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. Morrowind and Oblivion were both Elder Scrolls games that I played a lot, but I never did maybe any of the story, or I probably did some of it, but quickly noped out to just do whatever I wanted. And Skyrim, I played not as thoroughly as many people, but I finished the main story. I did a variety of the side quests. I did some of the DLC. So I played a ton of Skyrim, much more completely than I ever played Oblivion or Morrowind. But I've played all three of those. I never played, what was the other one? Daggerfall?
Daggerfall was number 2, and Arena was number 1.
Okay, yeah, I've never played either of those.
I played all of them except Daggerfall. Daggerfall was the one I skipped. And that's just because I didn't have a PC that could run it at the time. And I probably played the most of Morrowind and Oblivion. Oblivion and Morrowind were the two first Elder Scrolls games that my wife played, and she fell in love with them. She fell in love with the series. And we suffered through some truly colossal bugginess and jank in order to play those games, because Morrowind on the Xbox in particular was the first time I'd ever encountered such things as pervasive bugs in a console game. Wild.
Oh, God.
And so by the end, the system was so taxed by the demands that Morrowind was placing on it that if you went to the map screen, you had only about a 50-50 chance of the system not hard crashing.
Oh,
That's how bad it was. But we played anyway because we loved Morrowind.
Yeah.
And Skyrim is probably the one that I've played the least of. And I played a lot of Skyrim. Skyrim is well past my vague disenchantment with Bethesda games, in the sense that I'm not really here for the main plot line, so there's no real reason to finish. So the moment I get bored, I might as well just stop.
Sure.
And frankly, at a certain point, the difficulty curves in all of these games has typically been relatively bad. There comes a tipping point where things start to become trivial. Like every combat encounter, like, look, I have 17 different magical spells that are overpowered, and I've got the best equipment of the game, and it's all enchanted to the nth degree, and my skills are all maxed out. Like, what are you going to do, throw a bear at me? I'm not impressed. And at that point, unless I'm intrigued by the actual story, I'm not going to continue.
Yeah.
And I'm not a min-maxer. These are just things that happen when your game isn't particularly well calibrated. And so it was a combination of enthusiasm and trepidation that I loaded up the remaster for Oblivion, because I really loved Oblivion. It was the last Elder Scrolls game, well, it's only 2 games ago, but it was the last Elder Scrolls game where I could remember, I think they were doing something interesting with the setting, because every Elder Scrolls game takes place in a different setting. And Morrowind took place in Morrowind, and things in Morrowind are weird. Giant bugs, and weird mushrooms, and strange cults, and Dwemer everywhere. It's a whole scene. And so there's this joy of discovery, and everything's bizarre, and it was great. Oblivion, it takes place in Cyrodiil, which is the capital province, where everyone is basically the Roman Empire, but with katanas, more or less.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of bland. And so they said, what can we do to shake things up? Gates to hell. So you go through these gates, and suddenly you're in these weird blasted hellscapes, and so you're doing some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I found Skyrim comparatively boring was there's snow and dragons.
Yep.
I'm not big into dragons, and the whole sort of generic Viking thing doesn't really do it for me. I'm looking forward to Elder Scrolls being weird again, suffice to say. Anyway, so that's my 5-second critique of Skyrim, a game that most people adore. I thought that preferring Oblivion to Skyrim was a minority opinion, but it's a very popular one as it happens. I keep hearing more and more people talk about how they really liked Oblivion and Morrowind more than they liked Skyrim. Oblivion Remastered comes with so much baggage.
Oh, yeah.
On top of the fact that this is a game we've played before, there's this whole series and all the things that have happened in the series in the intervening... Anyway, when Oblivion was introduced, it wasn't quite... The Elder Scrolls wasn't quite the thing that it is now. It's really Oblivion and Skyrim that have cemented it. And so now it's, the Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion Remastered, as opposed to just, hey, here's Oblivion. Not that it was ever a humble project. It was always ambitious. So, what do you make of Oblivion Remastered, Caitlin? I am very curious to hear.
So, back in the day, when I first played Oblivion, for some reason, I thought that the Oblivion gates were very scary. I remember, literally being, in my adrenaline, scared, and I had a tiny little taste of that recently when I was in an Oblivion gate in Oblivion Remastered, and I went to go pick a plant and the plant bit me or, lashed out at me or whatever. And I was like, ah! And I was like, oh, okay. Yep. This might be part of what bothered me. But otherwise, like, it looks very cool, very creepy, but I was able to do it without, feeling like I was playing survival horror. So I liked that. I thought that the remaster was pretty great. I mean, the graphics all look, quote, like I remember. They don't look at all like what I remember. They managed to upgrade everything, so it looks lovely, but it still has, and I say this lovingly, it still has all the old jank.
It is so janky, Caitlin.
Even in their faces, like every now and then you see a character and you're like, that is an old school Oblivion face.
Okay, so since we're talking a little bit about the visuals.
Yeah.
It is a tale of two Oblivions. When it comes to the environments, and again, these are kind of environments we've seen a million times before. The dungeon, the crypt, the castle, the glade, the forest. I think it looks stunning. Mm-hmm. Really, really good. Not as good as Hellblade 2, which I think is still the high watermark of, naturalistic environments presented very, very attractively, but very visually appealing. And then there are the character models. And we're not talking Uncanny Valley here. They would love to get to the Uncanny Valley. They don't even know the way. The faces, the animations, whether they're walking, whether they're talking, everything is so janky and artificial. And the bad voice acting, it's all over the place.
Yeah, every now and then you walk up to a guy and he has like that weird scrunched up wood elf face and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry, man.
I remembered immediately, so much nostalgia. You walk into an inn or something and suddenly 6 NPCs are having loud conversations in the most stilted dialogue, poorly delivered. It's like, oh, this is what games were like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's oh man.
And it was like mind-blowing back then to be able to have these conversations going on that you didn't initiate and like
Yes. I can dimly remember. I also dimly remember the hype about how everything operates on a day-night cycle and people have their own schedules. Really what this means is that if you show up somewhere after dark, you just wait for the sun to rise. Because there's no virtue in wandering around at night. And indeed, unless you plan on burglarizing people, which I suppose is a valid option, if you're in a city, you're just going to hit that wait button and stand there like a Gomer for 12 hours, waiting for the sun to go back up. And the jank isn't limited to everything involving people and character models. I remember the leveling up being super strange. I remember when I was playing Oblivion, I found a guard who was facing away from a corner, and I had my character sneak against the wall behind his back.
Yeah.
And that leveled up the sneak skill. I hooked up a rubber band on the joystick, and I left, and I came back 8 hours later, and I was at max level. And I assumed, in my naivete, that they would have changed or fixed this. Nah.
No.
It's the same old jank. Athletics, you get that by running.
Yeah.
Might as well start hopping. Raise your acrobatics on the way.
Acrobatics too.
Might as well just keep casting healing spells. So if you really want to level up lockpicking, persuasion, barter, smithing, good luck. But your armor skills, no problem.
Yeah.
It's so strange. I can't believe they kept it that way. And I keep seeing people like overwhelmed with nostalgia. It's like, it's just as janky as I remember.
Yeah. I mean, if it weren't as janky as you remembered, I guess it would lose a small part of its charm, maybe? I don't know.
I think if they had devoted some effort to retooling the leveling system, that would have given me more doses of novelty. Mm-hmm. And made me more enthusiastic about it. As it is, I'll say, so with all this, I'd seen Sir Patrick Stewart in all his strange dead-eyed character model yammering at me, and I'd been through, killing all the rats and the various things with my equipment. And with all the baggage of finding a lot of Bethesda games kind of boring over the past few years, I got to tell you though, I got out of that first dungeon period, which was fine. I didn't hate it, but I got out of the first dungeon period, and you're looking out on Cyrodiil, and the music swells. It got me. It socked me with a sense of let's go do some adventure. And I think this was not just member berries. This wasn't just, oh, I remember this. Cool, let me do all this again. It was more like, ooh, there's this world I can explore.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that way very often. And this arguably 20-year-old game got me again.
Yep, it definitely did. It's so beautiful. It's really fun to just walk around and see what you run into. I believe this was Oblivion. One of my earliest memories of Oblivion was just wandering into the woods, and I came across this city, or not city, it was really a small town, and people were acting weird, and I was like, what's going on here? And so I decided to hang out and investigate, and I went to sleep, and then they tried to kill me because they were apparently cannibals or something. It was cool, just that sense of discovery, and getting a little piece of that again was really fun, even though at the same time I was having to remember back to how things worked 20 years ago. Things like, I have to make sure that I check the quest log book, because if I didn't get this special little flag, then going to this location won't do anything. And
right. Yeah, the jank is real and it is omnipresent. And this continues on into the combat. Because the combat is bad.
Yeah. I was playing, what was my class technically? I think Agent. So I was primarily doing bow and arrow, because I know that the stereotype is that everybody always plays stealth in these games.
Oh, yeah.
That is not what I have done ever. I don't know. When I was younger, I don't know. I got bored, honestly, sneaking around. It was too slow. So I just would run up and hit people with a big weapon. And then Skyrim, I actually played as a mage. So I did fireballs. So this was the first time that I'm doing stealth.
Huh.
And I don't know. It's been... If I don't end a fight with my sneak attack, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. I have to just hold in the back pedal button. Yeah, it's not very good.
This reminded me of why I kept defending Avowed's combat to you.
Yes.
Specifically by comparing it to Elder Scrolls games. Because, Skyrim made some improvements, but I'm going to just assert that Skyrim's combat wasn't particularly great either.
Yeah.
Avowed feels much more satisfying in part because things have weight. When you hit somebody with a weapon, it feels like you're making contact. And I just immediately remembered playing Oblivion Remastered, the classic Bethesda, you wave a weapon in the air as though unimpeded by any material objects.
Yeah.
And your opponent just starts taking hit point damage.
Yep.
It is very unsatisfying.
And it's so, it was so frustrating when I'm doing a quest that involves friendly NPCs.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
It's how do I not hit them?
It's such a madcap scrum, and they just dive in between you and your target, and they then get offended when you nick them in the shoulder. It's jeez.
It's whose fault is that, sir?
It is so telling how starved video gamers are for a genuine sense of adventure, wonder, and exploration, how much we're willing to put up with. With a game, I mean it.
No, you're right.
I mean, there's a certain stereotype that non-video gamers have of video games that's all basically Pac-Man, right? But when you look at how little it takes to be like, ooh, this is a whole world I want to dive into, and what we're willing to suffer through, it's amazing. Yeah. But I have to say, I was just having a great time wandering around in the wilderness in Oblivion, stumbling across things, and maybe I'll go into that crypt that I just found. Maybe I'll investigate that settlement over there. Maybe I won't. But just being in that world again is so satisfying.
Yeah, it really, really is. I remember the first time I played Oblivion, I instantly turned to a life of crime because I needed to make enough money to buy a horse. I apparently, I don't know if I just didn't know that you get given a horse by doing the main quest, because maybe I didn't even get that far at first. I don't know. I think alternatively, or what I also did in the old days, which I haven't done this time around, is I I decided to murder, and then I was invited to the Brotherhood. At some point in the Brotherhood storyline, you get Shadowmere, I think, which is like a black, red-eyed, maybe immortal horse.
Oh, wild.
Yeah. So that was fun. I haven't done any murder this time around. I mean, I've murdered plenty of people, but they all deserved it. No innocent people so far.
Well, if they're standing between you and a horse, clearly they deserve to die.
Clearly. So right now I'm just dealing with my, free painted pony. But someday I will get a big boy horse.
I'm not surprised that you care deeply about being able to have a horse in Oblivion. Yes. It never really mattered to me because fast travel is still a thing.
I know.
And riding a horse very much like the rest of the game is pretty jank.
Yeah.
So I respect the fact that it's there.
I remember back in the day that I'd be able to get a horse to go up certain cliff areas that I think I couldn't get up on foot. Something about like just going toward it and jumping a lot or something. I don't know. It was also very dangerous because, of course, if you fell, your horse would end up just, taking all the brunt of the damage and dying underneath you. Yeah, it was a thing.
You're not convincing me that it is less janky, Caitlin.
It is definitely not less janky. It's another extra brand of jank that you can partake of.
It's so weird that despite the fact that I played the game before and it's so janky that Oblivion, I don't know, maybe there is some secret pull of nostalgia that I'm not able to identify because I did not have this experience with Starfield. And I prefer science fiction considerably.
Yeah.
But Starfield just exerted this strong soporific effect on me. I'd be surprised if I even crossed a full hour playing Starfield. I vaguely intend to go back, like a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's so strange how Oblivion was like, yeah, let me see more of this, when Starfield had me snoring on the floor.
It's Oblivion. Has its own special little thing.
All right, so that's Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. Surprise delight. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not expecting this much.
Yeah.
Both in terms of jank and satisfaction, I gotta say.
Only kind of holdover from being a 20-year-old game that did rather bug me was the sheer number of loading screens. Just you do anything and you got a loading screen. And it's very fast, unlike it used to be. But it's still like, oh my god, all I did is go inside a house. Why do I need a loading screen?
Well, I'll do you one better. Not only do we get the loading screens, which are a relic from decades ago, we also get the modern burden of pre-compiling shaders, which I timed it on average on my machine, which is able to run the game fine, takes 3 whole minutes.
Wait, every time you start it?
So far, every time I have loaded up Oblivion,
I
have had to cache the shaders again. I don't know what it is. Because when it happened the first time, it took 3 minutes. I'm like, okay, it passes any indication this is only going to happen the once. No, it's happened every time.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's a lovely combination of all the old jank and all the new jank.
Yes.
So let us move on to some shameless hyping of upcoming titles, what we call shout. Caitlin, what would you like to shout out for us?
So today I'm going to shout out Beast of Reincarnation. I just saw a trailer for it a few days ago. It has a target release of 2026, and it is by Game Freak. Game Freak is a developer that you might know from the Pokemon role-playing games.
Oh, okay.
I'm unaware of them having done other styles of games, but this is an action RPG. It looks very different, a big departure from Pokemon role-playing games. And the gist is there's this great beast that appeared. It spewed forth blight, corrupting living things. And you play this outcast named Emma, and she has a cute wolf dog thing named Ku, and you're meant to destroy the Beast of Reincarnation. Visually, it kind of reminds me of this mix of like Princess Mononoke, not animation-wise, but just, girl and wolf, lots of wilderness stuff, and Nier. And it looks really cool. And I'm a big sucker with person with dog friend type games. So I'm super excited.
That's great.
Yeah, what are you shouting out today, Mark?
Well, having previously extolled the virtues of the Canadian studio DrinkBox, I discovered that they have a title slated for release in 2026 called Blighted. And they describe it as a psychedelic Western nightmare. It is going to be an action RPG, which is a genre that I am often delighted by. And as I say, DrinkBox has a solid track record of delightful releases, and I'm looking forward to Blighted.
Amazing. Oh, that looks really cool. Okay, well, now I'm looking forward to that too. That'll do it for this episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital. If you're interested in supporting the free media and us, you can always check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/ampfad. And I hope you all have a wonderful week.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at allmybestfriendsaredigital@gmail.com. Hope to see you again soon.